Never do this in Canada. Worst mistakes immigrants make in 2024. Did you know that nearly 40% of immigrants struggled to adapt in Canada during their first year? Moving to a new country is already challenging, but making simple mistakes in Canada could seriously complicate your life. Some of these errors might be things you'd never even think of. Whether it's underestimating the Canadian winter, unknowingly offending your new neighbors, or even losing out on thousands of dollars because of hidden tax rules, these blunders can add up fast. But don't worry, this video is here to help you avoid the most common mistakes that trip up newcomers. In fact, there's one major social faux pas that could instantly make you stand out in the worst way possible. Curious to know what it is? Keep watching, because we'll reveal that and more as we break down the biggest mistakes immigrants make when moving to Canada. From cultural quirks to navigating everyday life, these tips will save you from embarrassment, frustration, and unnecessary expenses. So, if you want to start your new life in Canada on the right foot, stay tuned. You won't want to miss a single detail. 1. Misunderstanding Canadian etiquette. One of the biggest mistakes immigrants make when settling in Canada is misunderstanding or completely overlooking Canadian etiquette. Canada is known for its friendly, polite, and welcoming culture, but that doesn't mean you can ignore social rules and expect everything to go smoothly. In fact, many newcomers find themselves in awkward situations or even damaging relationships because they fail to recognize just how important soft skills and politeness are in everyday interactions. First things first, Canadians are incredibly polite. You might have heard the stereotype that they apologize a lot, and it's true. Whether it's bumping into someone by accident or even when it's not their fault, Canadians will often say, sorry. It's not just about the word, it's a reflection of a broader cultural value. Politeness, humility, and respect for others are ingrained in Canadian society, so when you're in Canada, get used to saying sorry, please, and thank you more than you might be used to. Not doing so could quickly give the impression that you're rude, even if you don't mean to be. Another key element of Canadian etiquette is the emphasis on collaboration and teamwork. Whether at work or in social settings, Canadians prefer a more cooperative approach. They value input from everyone and believe in working together to find solutions. This means being a team player is much more important than standing out as the smartest or most knowledgeable person in the room. Showing off or being too direct can sometimes come across as arrogant, which won't win you any friends in Canadian workplaces or social circles. Instead, it's better to contribute ideas in a way that respects everyone's opinions and shows you're willing to help others succeed. Here's something surprising. Canadians tend to be indirect in their communication, especially when delivering criticism. If you've grown up in a culture where directness is appreciated, this can be a tricky adjustment. For example, instead of saying, "You did a bad job on this project," a Canadian might say something like, "Maybe we could improve this together," or "Have you thought about trying it this way?" It's subtle, but a polite way of pointing out an issue without being too harsh. If you miss these cues, you could find yourself confused or even inadvertently offending someone by being too blunt in return. The bottom line, understanding and adapting to Canadian etiquette will make your life in Canada much smoother, helping you avoid unnecessary friction in both your personal and professional relationships. 2. Ignoring the sales and income tax trap. Another common mistake that catches many immigrants off guard is the tricky world of Canadian taxes. Whether you're shopping for groceries, buying a car, or negotiating your salary, you'll need to understand that the numbers you see aren't what you'll actually end up paying or receiving. This is a serious pitfall that could throw off your budgeting and financial planning if you're not prepared. Let's start with sales tax. In Canada, prices on goods and services are almost always displayed before tax. Depending on which province you're in, you could be paying anywhere from 5% to 15% more than the listed price. For example, if you're shopping for a new phone and the price tag says $1,000, you might actually pay up to $1,150 once tax is added. This can be quite a shock for newcomers, especially if you're used to countries where taxes are already included in the price. So, always remember to mentally add sales tax before making a purchase, especially for big-ticket items, or you might end up overspending without realizing it. But it doesn't stop there. Income tax in Canada can also take a big chunk out of your paycheck, and it's different depending on the province you live in. When negotiating a salary, don't just look at the gross figure. Be sure to subtract income tax to get an idea of what your actual take-home pay will be. Depending on your income level and the province you live in, income tax rates can range anywhere from 15% to 50%. This can be a huge difference, especially if you've just started working and are trying to manage your finances in a new country. Here's a pro tip. If you're thinking about taking on a second job to earn more money, be careful. In Canada, having multiple jobs can sometimes push you into a higher tax bracket, which means you'll end up paying more taxes overall. It's a good idea to consult with an accountant before making any major financial decisions like this. So, don't fall into the tax trap. Understand the hidden costs of sales and income tax to manage your finances better. 3. Not preparing for the Canadian winter. One of the biggest shocks for newcomers is just how harsh and unpredictable the Canadian winter can be. If you're moving from a warmer climate, it's easy to underestimate what you're getting into. But ignoring the winter could lead to serious problems for both your comfort and your wallet. Canada's winter isn't just about the cold, it's about how long and intense it can be. In many parts of the country, winter lasts for several months, with temperatures frequently dropping below freezing. In cities like Winnipeg or Edmonton, it's not uncommon for the thermometer to hit 30 degrees or 22 degrees or even lower. And it's not just the temperature you have to worry about. Strong winds, icy conditions, and heavy snowfall can make even a short trip to the store feel like a major expedition if you don't prepare properly. You could find yourself struggling to cope with daily life. So, how can you avoid this? First, invest in proper winter clothing. A good quality winter coat, insulated boots, and layers of thermal clothing are essential to stay warm. It might seem like a big expense up front, but you'll be thankful for it when the cold hits. Don't forget accessories like hats, scarves, and gloves. Exposed skin can freeze in just minutes during extreme cold. Winter also affects transportation. Whether you drive or take public transit, be prepared for delays. Snow-covered roads can slow everything down, and in some areas, it's common for public transit to come to a halt during heavy snowfall. If you drive, winter tires are a must. Many provinces don't make them mandatory, but using them will drastically improve your car's grip on icy roads, reducing the chance of accidents. And if you park outside, budget extra time each morning to scrape ice off your windshield and shovel snow from around your car. Beyond clothing and transportation, don't overlook your home. Heating costs can skyrocket during winter months, especially if your home isn't well insulated. Be sure to check for drafts, and if possible, seal any gaps in windows or doors to keep the cold air out and the warm air in. In short, underestimating the winter can make life in Canada extremely uncomfortable. The best way to survive, and even enjoy, winter is to be fully prepared for the long, cold months ahead. 4. Treating Canada like the US. Here's a common mistake that catches a lot of immigrants off guard, assuming Canada is just like the United States. On the surface, it's easy to see why people make this assumption. Both countries share a long border, have similar standards of living, and even have close economic ties. But dig a little deeper, and you'll quickly realize these two nations are quite different, especially in terms of culture, values, and social norms. For starters, Canadians tend to be more reserved and less individualistic than their southern neighbors. While Americans often pride themselves on standing out and promoting their personal achievements, Canadians put a greater emphasis on the collective good and teamwork. This difference shows up everywhere, from workplaces to schools. If you come across as too self-promoting, you may be seen as boastful rather than confident. Another key distinction lies in the political and healthcare systems. Canada has a publicly funded healthcare system, which means most medical services are free at the point of use. It's a huge source of pride for many Canadians, who view access to healthcare as a basic right, not a privilege. Political discourse in Canada also tends to be more moderate compared to the often polarized debates in the US. Canadians lean more towards compromise and consensus, valuing a social safety net and programs that benefit the wider population. You'll also notice subtle but important differences in how Canadians approach everyday life. Politeness and respect for personal space are key in Canada, extending to interactions in public spaces like stores, restaurants, and on public transport. Small talk with strangers is less common, and there's a stronger emphasis on not causing a scene or drawing attention to yourself. Finally, one of the biggest surprises for many newcomers is how proud Canadians are of their identity. Even though the culture might seem similar to the US on the surface, Canadians are very keen on maintaining their distinctiveness. They love their hockey, Tim Hortons, and unique slang. Yes, toke is a thing. So, if you want to fit in, be sure to appreciate the differences and avoid assuming that the two countries are interchangeable. In short, Canada isn't just America's little brother. Understanding these key differences will help you integrate more smoothly and show respect for your new home's unique culture. 5. Overstepping personal boundaries in conversations. When you're new to Canada, you might find yourself eager to make friends and build connections. However, one thing that can quickly backfire is diving into personal topics too soon. Canadians, while polite and friendly, tend to be quite private when it comes to personal matters, especially with people they've just met. Asking questions about someone's age, salary, or relationship status can be seen as intrusive and might make the other person uncomfortable. In many other cultures, it's common to ask about family or personal life as a way to show interest and build rapport. But in Canada, these topics are often considered off-limits until you've built a deeper relationship. Instead, keep conversations light at first. Topics like hobbies, work, the weather. Yes, Canadians love talking about the weather, or recent events are all safe bets when you're just getting to know someone. If you're unsure whether it's okay to ask something more personal, let the other person lead. Canadians will often reveal personal details when they feel comfortable, and that's your cue that the conversation can go deeper. Until then, avoid pressing for information and respect their pace. You might hear someone say, "I'd rather not talk about that," or notice a slight hesitation before they answer. That's a sign to back off and change the subject. Body language also plays a big role in how Canadians communicate personal boundaries. Pay attention to subtle cues, like stepping back or crossing arms, which can indicate discomfort. In Canada, personal space is valued, and standing too close or being overly touchy can be off-putting. Keep in mind that while being friendly and approachable is encouraged, pushing too far too fast in personal conversations can hurt your chances of building lasting relationships. To avoid awkwardness, think of personal conversations in Canada as a slow dance. Let things develop naturally and don't rush. Canadians may seem reserved at first, but once you've earned their trust, you'll find them to be warm, loyal friends who are happy to open up. It's all about understanding the balance between curiosity and respect. 6. Disrespecting public services and employees. Navigating public services in Canada can be a bit of a test in patience, and this is where many immigrants make a misstep. Whether you're at the doctor's office, the DMV, or even a local bank, things tend to move at their own pace, which might be slower than what you're used to. But here's the thing. Showing frustration or impatience in these situations won't get you anywhere. In fact, it can work against you. Canada has a culture of politeness and respect, especially when it comes to service workers. So, if you find yourself in a long queue or dealing with a delay, the best approach is to remain calm and courteous. Raising your voice or becoming visibly upset is not only considered rude, but could also result in negative consequences. You could be asked to leave, or worse, gain a reputation for being difficult, which could come back to haunt you later, especially in smaller communities. Another thing to keep in mind is that many public service employees are bound by strict procedures, which means they can't rush things even if they want to. Whether it's processing paperwork or handling requests, there are systems in place that take time, so your impatience won't speed things up. Instead, it's more effective to politely ask for clarification if something is unclear or inquire about timelines without sounding demanding. It's also worth noting that public services in Canada can operate differently depending on the province or territory. In larger cities, you might experience longer wait times simply because of the population density. On the other hand, rural areas may have fewer resources, leading to delays for different reasons. Wherever you are, approaching these situations with a positive, patient attitude will make the experience much smoother. The key takeaway: patience goes a long way in Canada, especially when dealing with public services. Treat the staff with respect, follow the procedures, and understand that things might take a bit of time. It's all part of the Canadian way: polite, calm, and respectful interaction, even when things don't go as quickly as you'd like. 7. Neglecting Canadian road and traffic rules. In Canada, one of the most overlooked mistakes newcomers make is not fully understanding the importance of road rules, particularly when it comes to cyclists. Canada is a bike-friendly country, especially in cities like Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal, where you'll find dedicated bike lanes and a large number of cyclists year-round. What many immigrants might not realize, however, is that cyclists in Canada are considered vehicles, and they have the same rights and responsibilities as drivers on the road. This means that as a driver, you must treat cyclists just like any other vehicle. Failing to do so can lead to serious accidents or hefty fines. One of the most common mistakes is not checking your blind spot before making a turn or opening your car door when parked. Known as dooring, hitting a cyclist with a suddenly opened car door is a major hazard and can result in severe injuries or legal consequences. Always double-check for cyclists before you open your door or make a turn. Cyclists, for their part, are required to follow the same traffic rules as cars. They are expected to stop at red lights, yield at stop signs, and signal when turning. However, not all cyclists follow these rules consistently, which can create dangerous situations for both drivers and pedestrians. As a pedestrian, it's equally important to be cautious around cyclists. Don't assume that a cyclist will stop at a crosswalk just because you have the right of way. Many cyclists may slow down, but not come to a full stop, so always check before stepping into the road, even if the light is in your favor. To avoid any unpleasant incidents, whether you're driving or walking, it's crucial to stay aware of your surroundings and understand that cyclists are a big part of the traffic ecosystem in Canada. Respect the rules of the road, and remember that a moment of distraction or carelessness can lead to serious consequences for everyone involved. 8. Not accounting for Canada's vast distances. Canada's sheer size is something that often takes newcomers by surprise. If you're moving from a densely populated country where everything is within a short drive or a quick bus ride, you'll need to adjust your mindset. Canada is the second largest country in the world, and with that comes vast distances between cities, towns, and even within urban areas. Underestimating these distances can lead to frustration, especially when traveling or planning commutes. For example, traveling between major cities can take much longer than expected. Driving from Toronto to Montreal, two of Canada's largest cities, takes about 6 hours. Want to get from Toronto to Vancouver? That's a 5-hour flight across the country, longer than a trip from New York to Los Angeles. Many immigrants don't realize just how far apart everything is until they try to plan a road trip or visit friends or family in another part of the country. Even within cities, the distances can be daunting. Canadian cities are typically spread out, with large suburban areas that require a car to navigate. Public transportation is available, but it can be slower and less reliable, particularly during the harsh winter months. In cities like Toronto or Vancouver, traffic congestion can also be a major issue, turning what should be a quick trip across town into an hour-long ordeal. For those moving to rural areas or smaller towns, the distances between essential services like grocery stores, hospitals, and schools can be even more significant. You might need to drive for 30 minutes or more just to reach the nearest grocery store or doctor's office. This can be a shock to those coming from countries where everything is conveniently located nearby. The lesson here: plan ahead and get comfortable with longer travel times. Whether you're commuting daily or traveling across the country, it's important to account for the extra time it takes to get from one place to another in Canada. Adjust your schedule accordingly and be prepared for longer trips, especially in winter when snow and ice can make roads even slower. Canada's vast distances are part of what makes it unique, but they also require some serious adjustment in terms of time and travel planning.